So in this session, probably fairly quick, is from carrying over from the previous session that we're now de-emphasizing the machine side and more emphasizing at a high level description of the algorithm. So more and more towards describing the algorithm and less on describing the behavior, the function of the machine. So this session will be more about how to describe the algorithm. Okay. So let's try to standardize. Let's create a standard, if you like, for the description of an algorithm, and that's sort of the theme of this this session, right? Well, one of the first, if you're going to do that, if you're going to describe an algorithm, and before you can start talking about how to standardize that, one obvious, if you think about it, one obvious question you need to consider is at what level of detail will you describe the algorithm. So we will talk a bit about that for the moment. And Sipser provides, now perhaps I should have checked with other text. My question at the moment is, to what extent is his division into sort of three levels of detail, extremely detailed, middle level detail, and less detail. To what extent is that standard amongst other authors, or is it Sipser? Now, there's a certain amount of common sense involved, so I can readily go along with what Sipser's doing, but I do have a question mark. Is it standard amongst other authors, or is it Sipser? Maybe Sipser. Anyway, so he divides descriptions of algorithms into three levels of detail, with the emphasis on how much detail are you going to put into your description, your standard description. And he labels these three levels as the formal description. We're quite familiar with that, been doing that for quite a time. So, for example, the formal description of an algorithm, and remember, Turing algorithm. So the formal description of the Turing machine that implements that algorithm would be a 7-tuple. Is that's correct? Let me check. Formal description of our Turing machine. It was a 7-tuple, yes. Yes, a 7-tuple. Okay. So we're quite familiar with that, and that's the full description, extremely detailed, and that's the problem, of course. There's just too many details, especially with the transition function. You need to describe every state, and you have to specify every term in the 7-tuple, right? The 7-tuple formal description of the TM, hence the algorithm. So you'd have to, it spells out in full, all the details. The Turing machine's states, its transitions, functions, and so on. And the other 5, well, they tend to be easier, but especially the transition function is the real killer. Okay, so that's the most detailed level, the formal description. But virtually no one does it. It's just too much effort, too tedious. Except in the most trivial of Turing machine cases, most trivial algorithms. Okay, so second sort of intermediate middle level is a sort of compromise between the third one we'll do, which is relatively new. We've been talking about it, sort of giving hints increasingly of it. The so-called high-level description. But we'll get onto that later. But the middle level, it's higher, relative compared to this one. Now it will use English prose, okay, and it'll talk about things like how the Turing machine, how it moves its head, how it stores data on the tape, and so forth. But at this intermediate level, typically you will not give details about the states or the transition function. Right? That's too detailed. You just drown in details. So now it's talking about implementation, of course, because you're talking about how the tape gets manipulated and how the read-write head moves back and forth, and we've done examples of that kind of thing, right? And what it writes on its tape. So that's the implementation description, right? That's sort of in the middle, the second intermediate level of detailed description. Okay, now the third one, and that's the one we'll be using pretty well from now on. It too, similar to the middle one, it too uses English prose, describing, but not at level of implementation, but at high level, talking about the algorithm, and not worrying about how the algorithm is implemented. Okay, so it's using just English text, English prose to describe the algorithm, and it doesn't worry about the machine detail. It doesn't worry about the implementation details, like the moving of the head and what it writes under the tape, and all that's implementation stuff, machine stuff, not used. Right? It's talking about the algorithm itself. So you don't need to talk about how the machine's, what it does with its tape or the head or how it moves or any of that kind of stuff. Right? Now, so far in this course, we've been giving formal descriptions and implementation level descriptions. Well, you may remember an example where we're trying to detect the language whose strings were of the form W#, and we had the header moving back and forth. That kind of description would be an implementation description, right? A middle level, level 2. Okay, so we won't be doing that so much. From now on, it'll more be level 3, the high level description, talking about the algorithm. And if you're a programmer, that's what you've been doing for years, probably, right? You talk about the algorithm, and you don't care about the hardware, how the hardware actually executes it, right? That's pretty standard in computer programming. So we're heading towards that usual practice. All right. Now, okay. So you've done enough. Presumably, you've got enough experience dealing with Turing machines. You've got an idea now how to program with them at very low level. So that will make you appreciate that the Turing machines are the underlying, if you like, device to implement your algorithm. So that allows you, once you're comfortable with all that, the implementation side of things, now you can refocus more on the algorithm, as I keep saying, right? And that means that the high-level description, like type 3, the high-level description, is enough. It's sufficient. You don't have to worry about implementation level. It's level 2, or even worse, level 1, which is just extremely detailed description. The full formal description, right? Giving full details of the 7 tuple of the Turing machine that implements your algorithm. Okay, so that is the discussion on various levels of description. Essential question to start with, of course. What level of description will you use? So we've settled on level 3, the high level description.